This
session.
conference
Okay.
will now be recorded.
So you all are able to see my screen, I mean the whiteboard that I'm sharing.
Yes.
Yep.
Are you all able to see it clearly?
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay. So yesterday we have discussed on how we want to analyze and then select a tool, right? So there are many tools other than Selenium as well, but we also see about our resource availability, right? The resourcing and the technical tool stack availability. As per that, so for Selenium, so we have good advantage, that is the open source. It's a large open source community, right? Very large, very huge. So in case if we have any challenges during our development of our framework or mission, so if we face certain challenges, so there is a forum for us. There is an open community, very large community, which is from years, right? That's the basic advantage of Selenium. More than probably I guess like more than 60% of the projects, test automation projects, they run on Selenium. It could be again, you know, diverse between these languages, right? Some may use multiple languages as per their need, right? They when I say multiple languages, it cannot be like within the same test automation project, but they can have multiple projects within a solution, and then they can solution it, right? So we would see what these stuff are. I mean, what is this project, how to create that project, so what tool we use, we will see down the line, right, when we discuss on that. So we saw why this Selenium is more, I mean, more prominent, and then we also discussed on how to select our language. So based upon the application tool stack, so we could be easily able to correlate and then select our language using which we want to automate, right? Now we would see something called, I mean, the types of test automation, right? It is not just about types of test automation, I would say, rather I would say the types of testing. Okay, in a high level, when it comes to types of testing, so how many types of testing are there? Any idea to anyone?
Functional, non-functional.
Okay, what else?
So again, they are segregated to different parts like security testing, performance testing.
Right. Okay, when I say types of testing, let's say, okay, phases, different phases that
Yeah.
we have in our test life cycle, right? So maybe I could give you like unit testing, that is one phase, right? It could, we have functional, non-functional, that's on high level, but when it comes to different, various types of tests that we do in our uh, end-to-end agile, sorry, end-to-end agile life cycle. So it would be unit tests. What other test cases? I mean, what other testing you would do?
Functional regression
Hmm.
end-to-end.
Integration
Move.
testing.
Okay, functional regression. Somebody said. Okay. What else?
End-to-end. End-to-end.
Non-functional.
Integration.
Somebody said. Integration testing. Right. What else?
End-to-end.
System testing.
Correct. Okay. What else? Any other testing that we do? acceptance testing. Agree? User acceptance testing. And somebody said the regression testing.
Yeah,
Right?
regression, exploratory or ad hoc testing.
Right. Okay. Somebody said exploratory. Okay. What else? Non-functional, somebody said. When you say non-functional testing, so again, this would have some sub parts in it, right? One would be
Yes.
performance testing. The other one would be security testing, right?
Smoke testing,
So,
sanity testing.
right. There are lots of others like end-to-end testing, compatibility testing, usability testing, right? API testing. Now, API testing again comes under functionality testing, right? It's part of our functional testing itself, right? Then UI testing and then penetration testing. So penetration, load testing, performance testing, these all come under non-functional. Okay, right? So let's on a high level understand now. At a high level, you would say functional or non-functional, right? If somebody asks what kind of testing you do, I might say like, yeah, I would do functional testing or non-functional testing. So within that, when there are various types of testing that are involved within functional testing, so then I would say integration testing, system testing. So unit testing, I'm not going with it right now. I'm not considering this as a part of our SDET activities. Okay, this could be part of dev. So dev team probably would be handling the unit testing. So our scope would be very minimal here. Okay, so integration testing, system testing, and then regression testing, right? What else testings are there? Regression, exploratory, right?
Smoke
And
testing.
probably we can say like UI testing, right? So
Smoke testing, sanity
all these
testing.
which, right? So all these testing, sanity testing, yeah, smoke, right? All this. So these all can be categorized into functional, right? Correct? What is this functional? What is this functional testing? Anyone can define it in simple words?
Yeah, to check the means functionality as per the business requirement.
Right. So for any kind of testing that we do, be it an integration system or any other regression testing, so what we may mainly check is the functionality of the application, and it basically comes from the business requirements, right? So somebody would come up with the requirements. I mean, probably I would say the client might have some requirements, or if it is a product team, so for your product, so we would have product owners who come up with those requirements for us, right? They talk to the clients who are using that application, and then they try to come up with some analysis. They do some analysis based upon the requirements that were requested by the client, and then they get back to the team asking that these requirements, like requirement 1, requirement 2, right? So these need to be implemented into the application. So that's all. That is the high level work that would be done by the product owners. And now from here, who has to take this? So once the requirements are fixed, their priority is done. This is all done by the product owners, right? They discuss with the business, they discuss with the clients, they get back to the team and say like these are the requirements and this is the priority based upon which we need to work on them. So now the requirements would have uh, some description and as well as acceptance criteria, right? These all need to be documented for each of the requirements, right? And then we would have some planning. This is the agile activity, usual agile activity that we do, right? And now once the specific development of a requirement, let's say that requirement 1 is getting developed. Now it is considered to develop, right? It is scoped for our sprint level activities. So wherein developers would be involved in what was that? What we say? The planning activity, where they discuss
Sprint planning.
or the refinement activity, right? Rather, I would say refinement activity, where dev and QA both sit along with the product owner, discuss about this requirement which was drafted, and they would analyze regarding the technical feasibility, right? The efforts that it would take in order to achieve this, the technical feasibility, the tool stack that we want to use, right? And the technology that we want to use, how we want to achieve it. And at the same time, when dev analyzes for this technical feasibility, QA would analyze what parameters? Test planning, I mean scope, right? The scope of test planning that we need to do, whether it is just the functional manual testing, whether we also need to do the automation to this, whether it is when you would consider whether it could be an automation. So first, once you come up with your manual effort and you try to do your test planning activity, right? What is this planning activity? This is where you create the manual tests. By the time dev starts working in development, you would start creating your functional tests, right? So once you create the functional tests, maybe you would analyze whether these would be candidate for regression, right? So what is regression now? Anyone?
To check the existing functionality is working as it is, even if the new code
Right,
is developed or new
right,
feature is developed.
correct, correct. So absolutely. So what we do in the regression testing, what we do is to ensure that the new changes which we have implemented or the new functionality that we have implemented did not break the existing functionality, right? So you check for this test cases and see if there is a right candidate to be scoped as a part of the regression. Then you go scope it for the regression testing, right? Let me pull this little the other side. Yeah. Okay. Now, after this, what you do, then you would come to this part, whether you need to automate it or not, right? That's when you come, because regression testing is something which is a repetitive task, right? So when is this automation comes into picture? So you people only said yesterday that if we have some repetitive tasks, right, like regression testing, so we would try to automate and minimize our efforts, right? So what is the major area where this automation team works? It's about the regression testing. So does it rest only with the regression testing? No, right? Yesterday we discussed there are many other areas like process automation, some other utilities that we can come up with, right? So apart from that, there are many other phases where this automation would be required, right? So it is not just about the functional automation. When it comes to automation, so you have various phases. One is the functional automation. The other one, we also have automation at non-functional side as well, right? That's why I was coming up with all this to make you understand that when we say automation, so automation doesn't just rest with your functional automation, right? So we have various types of automation that a team would be involved in. So even in the non-functional testing, you do manual and as well as automated way. There are tools which we can use, right? This is for non-functional. Even for functional, the similar way we have tools, right? Manual and as well as automation. And one of the tools within the functional automation is Selenium. Now you know where it falls. It falls at functional automation level, and we do regression automation, and we also do what else by using Selenium? Smoke and sanity checks, right? Usually these phases would be automated, right? Using your Selenium. And now the language can be any language, again, like JavaScript, Java, C Sharp, or Python, right? Whichever language, because Selenium supports any language. Clear on this? Any questions till now? I just started right from the basic because people need to understand, right? Where as an automation team or an automation tester you would be involved, correct? So as a QA member, it is our duty to involve right from the which phase it is, planning or the refinement phase. So along with the dev, QA is also way more important, to involve in this refinement sessions, right? To understand the technology stack that the dev would be using, to understand the requirements. So based upon that, we come up with the test, right? Now the functional team would come up with the test cases. Test planning totally rests with functional manual team. So unless once the test cases are executed manually and tested, right? That's why we cannot omit the manual team totally out of the scope. At least for once, the test cases need to be executed manually and tested successfully, right? So then the outcome would be like whether the executed test cases need to be scoped for the regression. So if you have 10 test cases planned for this requirement one, it doesn't necessarily need to be all the 10 cases should fall under regression, right? It could be 5 or maybe less or maybe more. It all depends on the basic analysis that our QA team does, right? So it all depends on the changes that, let's say like the requirement 2 came into picture. So at that time, you need to analyze what is, the impact of that particular requirement. So you would do impact analysis, right? Along with the dev, you would also start involving and doing this impact analysis. You need to document what modules would be impacted. So accordingly, then we add those scenarios into our regression suite, right? So this part mostly a functional tester, a manual tester would do, and it is our duty also to get involved there, because unless we understand the functionality of a product, you may not be able to automate it, right? We need to know what exactly we are doing, correct? So you need to have some references like the artifacts related to those test cases. Probably manual functional team would have captured those screenshots for each of the test case steps and other stuff, right? So for us, our duty is to be in sync with our functional testing team, go hand in hand with them, try to understand the requirements, try to understand the test cases that were scoped into the regression, and then start our test automation, right? That is the bread and butter for us, correct? For any automation tester. Clear till now? Clear? Any questions? Everyone is silent?
Clear.
We're clear, right? Okay, great. So let's be, let it be an interactive session. Yeah. So right. So now, where are we? So yes, we understood what is the bread and butter for us, right? Our work is primarily focused on the regression automation, and then what is this? Smoke and sanity, right? These are something which is primary task for us, our primary bread and butter for us. Now, so we identified this. Now the next phase would be within the automation. So we have two things, two kinds of functional testing. One is your API testing. The other one is your UI testing. What is this API testing? Anyone?
We test different endpoints.
Yeah,
So basically,
correct,
API testing is the means combination of endpoints for a particular functionality.
correct. So does everyone understand what is API, or anyone who do not have that basic understanding? Just raise your hand. Don't be shy. So just raise the hand such that I would understand, and then accordingly, I would explain it. So everyone has the idea on API, right? Application interface. No reactions. So I guess everyone has good understanding on it. Okay, great. So if that's the case, it's really great. Okay, so now, yes, somebody said it's all endpoints, correct? Endpoints, or we could call as services, right? Which actually takes the data from UI to the server, and again communicates back from the server to UI, right? This is what this APIs does, or the services does, microservices, right? We don't go into in depth into the architecture and other stuff right now, because we are focused on the functional automation, right, of UI. Now when it comes to functional automation, so we have two stuff. One is here, the other one is here, right? API testing and UI testing. Both could be manual and automated way, right? Both the phases. Even API testing, people can do manually and they can automate as well, such that they would have an automated way of testing them. Even for UI testing, so both manual and automated way. But The catch here is at least once those need to be tested manually, right? Otherwise, there are certain challenges that we would face. If at all you are directly just automating them and then trying to run those, so what are the challenges that we would have? What are the challenges? Let's say that requirement 1, which we were discussing, right? So that requirement 1 is scoped for the development and it is in progress, but what we were doing is we were just coming up with our test script. When I say test script, it's not a manual test case, so automated way. Okay, we do not have a manual team right now. So now you are doing it, you are developing the test script. So whenever there are changes here at dev level, you would also need to overlook, you would also need to review your scripts, right? Till the time this is finalized and delivered for testing. That is one thing. So you would be into a loop now. Like keep on updating your test scripts. So test script maintenance, I would call it as maintenance, right? This would be huge, right? So if at all we are not having a manual team and trying to test it manually at least for once to look at the stability of that particular requirement, your test case maintenance would be high. So when it comes to your test case maintenance, which is high, that again impacts what? What will be impacted? Yesterday we discussed. So we have to reduce the efforts. We have to reduce the cost, right? So this money, everything is related to money. So if your maintenance is high, again, your, you know, what is that? Money and the efforts that you are investing would be high, right? Correct? So we need to take the right approach at the right time in our implementation such that our maintenance would be less, right? That's what we need to do, right? Simply, automating a test case we cannot say like we know automation and we are automation testers or SDETs. So our duty is to showcase the metrics related to the efforts that we are saving and as well as the amount that we are saving, right? So we are here for that, correct? Clear on this part? Any questions?
Maybe.
No? We are good? Shall I proceed further?
So maintenance part, Prashant, you're talking about, is it
Uh-huh.
with respect to the UI test scripts?
Yes, yes. Right now we are focused on Selenium C#. That itself is functional UI automation,
UI,
right?
yes, yes, yeah.
No,
So
when
one
it
thing
comes to,
also,
Mhm. Yeah, go ahead.
Also, I just wanted to ask, it is just relatable with API as well. So with
Mhm.
UI testing, we do the functionality check using our Selenium C# code. Okay, but when it comes to
Mhm.
API testing, so does it require to do the scenario-wise flow testing, or individual API can be tested and we can share the results, or we need to do it in a scenario-wise?
Right. Let me proceed with the next concept, right? That is about our test approach, right? We would talk about the test approach and I guess you would find the answer for this. Yeah. I don't want to, directly reveal that, but rather go through this test approach discussion, and then definitely you would find answer within it, right? Shall I proceed? Any other questions other than that? So sorry, who is this? Who asked this question?
This is me, Saurabh.
Saurabh. Okay. Yeah, good question. So just park this till we discuss this test approach today, right? Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, no? Okay. I'm proceeding further, right? Okay. So this is where when I say like we need to focus on our approach and our way of automation such that we have less maintenance efforts. This maintenance again, right? When it comes to this test scripts, right? So it is again a dependency on automation testers, right? Or rather I can say estates. So if I ask some functional manual tester to sit and then maintain the test scripts, they cannot do it, right? So that's where we need to look into our approach strategy as well in such a way that we would have less maintenance and more, what we say like uh, uh, more faster results, right? Now, have you ever heard about a test pyramid? Anyone? No? Yes? No? Okay, let's talk about this, right? So what is this test pyramid? So I said test pyramid. So what is this test pyramid? So in order to organize our test efforts, right, in a right manner or a focused manner, so somebody came with this test pyramid approach. This is one of the approaches. It doesn't mean that you need to strictly follow this, but following this have given some good results, right? So that's why they have put this into the uh, curriculum, right? Not just curriculum, I mean into the QA thing, like it is part and parcel of the QA, right? So what is this test pyramid? It is a framework for organizing the testing efforts and prioritizing the tests, right? So whenever there is some test plan that you come up with, so every time there would be some priority and as well as severity, right? Have you ever heard about this priority and severity terms? Anyone? No? Okay. Let's talk about this priority. What is this priority in general? What does that mean? So I have Amresh and I have Suraj and Saurav. So now if I say like my priority is I want to focus for I want to focus on Saurav and Suraj, the names which are starting with yes. So now what is that I have said? My priority or the primary focus would be on the names that are starting with yes, right? So it is obviously Saurav and Suraj. So I would just focus on them. So I have said that my priority is that. So I have set some priority for it, right? In the similar way, even for the test cases, that we have come up with, we need to set some priority. Now, who would set this priority? This priority is something which would be set by the product owners, right? Product owners or the BAs, business analysts, are the better persons to assess which functionality and which module is of high priority. Accordingly, our test cases would also be prioritized, right? So that is one thing. Now, once you come up with the priority, when I say you, testers, functional testers, so they would just start planning, test planning activity. That is their test case creation, manual test case creation. Now, for you in automation, if you need to identify what is a high priority task for you, so there is an approach again. We will discuss on it post this test pyramid. Okay. So now, what is this test pyramid? It ensures that we are providing adequate coverage, right, at each of the test phases, and as well as prioritizing those tests such that it covers all the layers of testing. When I say all the major layers, right? So what is that? Let's say my pyramid, right? It would be like this, I guess. Somewhere like it looks like a triangle, right? Where here it would be narrow and down it would be broad, right? So now what is this? This has a base. Base is this side, right? Now, right, starting from here, so what this pyramid suggests, the base should be unit tests, right? So unit tests are fast, cheap, easy to write. Agree? Fast, cheap, and easy to write. And moreover, uh, like less luggage, more comfort. Likewise, this task is not focused by SDETs or even the functional testers, right? So it is always good for us, correct? Just kidding. Yeah. Okay. So now after this, what is the next phase? The next phase or the middle layer would be your integration tests, or you can also call as API tests. And then the final layer, this would have your functional end-to-end tests, right? Okay. Now can we come to a conclusion or some correlation between this? When you see here from top to bottom, here this is your base, and then base is of unit test, and then it is the second layer is of integration test or the API test, and the third layer is of end-to-end test. So keeping this, like while moving from bottom to the top, right? So it denotes about the number of tests and test coverage that we have to focus on, and as well as what was that? Test coverage, and as well as your uh, ease of testing, right? It talks about all this. This particular pyramid itself gives you all of those. So let's say somebody is at the base camp and he is trekking a what I say, like um, some hill, right? So now when the person is at the base, he might be feeling it is a bit easy, not tiresome as well, right? In the real time. So in the similar way, these unit tests are fast, cheap, and easy to write. So what they are suggesting is, in the pyramid, have more unit tests coverage, right? More unit test coverage as much as possible. So you need to come up with, you in the sense, the team has to have high volume of more coverage of unit tests. Maybe 70 to 80% of your testing should happen at this level, unit tests. That's what they suggest. Okay, this is one of the approach which is highly successful. That's why I'm discussing here, right? And then comes the integration test. So somebody asked me whether do we require to do just the API or the endpoint level testing, or the functional testing using the multiple endpoints, right? Saurabh, am I correct? That's the question from your side, right? Are you there, Saurabh? Was that the question from you? I guess you're speaking on mute. Okay, fine. Okay, so this integration test or the API test. So now what they say, this integration tests are the tests that ensure your data flows correctly. So if you want to ensure your data flows correctly, this itself would recommend you to do functional level checks using APIs, right? Correct? If we want to evaluate our data flow, let's say my module or the functionality says submit a form, sorry, submit form, push those details into database DB, and then when I retrieve, so details should be displayed on the new window. Okay, let's say this is my flow. So now, so as to test this flow, so what I would do, test the data flow, whether the data is flowing from one unit to the other unit. So very first one is the registration form, and then the database, and then again when we click on, this is the action, so click on it, it has to show in the new window, right? Data has to flow to the new window and it would be visible to us. So these all verifications, if I need to perform, so it's obvious that when it is API test, so even with the API test, so they recommend to evaluate your entire data flow, right? So either manually or through automation. So now we follow this, if we follow this test pyramid approach, so the suggestion would be like 20 to, I mean, yeah, 20 to 30% of your test coverage should hold by API tests. Clear on this part? Clear? Now, and then the focus would be shifting to the end-to-end or the functional UI testing. Now, for the functional UI end-to-end testing, they say it should be 5 to 10% only. 5 to 10% of your tests should be your UI automation or UI functional tests. That's how they want us to focus, right? This is what test pyramid says. So clear on the test pyramid part? Any questions here? Any questions on this?
Prashant, the unit test is
Yeah.
covered by the developer itself, isn't it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so 70-80% they will cover themselves. So 20 to
Now
30%
when
plus 10%.
right. So when see ultimate goal is like the for us it is to um, test the application. As such, there are no critical bugs and defects leakages into the higher environments, right? That is the major goal. Now it is about our quality, to maintain our quality, right? So ultimate goal is that. But as per this test pyramid, the suggestion is let's do that component level or that unit level testing, fragments that whichever we have. So let's test those. because those are very easy to test, right? Individual components. So writing the unit test is much easier. There won't involve major maintenance for them, right? Even if the code changes, uh, there may not be much changes at the parameters level, like what data need to be passed and what data it need to collect, right? So they say like aim for 70 to 80% of total tests under the unit test. Usually in general in any of the projects, if we follow this, you would have a successful you know uh, testing of your application, because we never ever can say like testing is complete, right? It never, nobody can say like 100% we have tested our application, be it if you involve all the way in all these phases of testing, but still you may not say uh, that my testing is 100% even after you are doing all those testing, right? Some parts of testing that we scope, and then we say like we achieved our scope of testing, but we never say like we have 100% tested the application and we don't have any bugs or defects into it, zero leakages into the production, right? Unless we experience that issue at the live, I mean at the production, so probably uh, we may not experience that in the lower environments, but at the higher environment there could be some issue, and then they again come back to us asking whether this is reproducible in the lower environments or not. Sometimes it is reproducible, probably it is a miss from the team to identify early, right? And then again you would reevaluate your coverage, you would increase little more coverage, you add little more scenarios to it, you scope them into your regression, and then you try to automate them in case if those are scope for automation, right? So this is the process. It's a continuous process in order to improve the quality of our product. But testing is a never-ending process, it is, right? Why we call it as a process? Because it is a never-ending thing. So we just scope and then say we achieved our scope of testing. That's all, right?
Right.
So now
Okay.
within that,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, go
Sorry.
ahead.
So as that, I'm covering only 20 to 30%, isn't it?
Right, 30% and plus somewhere 10%. So if it is like 40% of the testing is in your hands, yeah,
Yeah.
so it is. It doesn't mean that you do not need to provide coverage, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Our main component is coverage. What coverage you are providing. It is not about
Right.
the number of tests, right? So
Right.
primary focus would be on the test coverage. How much coverage we are providing, at what level. So they just said it as 70 to 80, 20 to 30, and 5 to 10, just at the I mean, looking at some of the projects, probably they might have taken some projects, maybe complex projects, medium level projects, and easy projects. Some of the projects they have, and then concluded with this. But it doesn't mean that we need to strictly follow only this percentages, right?
Okay. Okay. Got it. Got it.
It need not to be. But when it comes to your pyramid, so your pyramid itself would say which should be the more, right? Which should have the more coverage. So when compared to your end-to-end UI automation tests, you keep more coverage at the API testing. It would save enormous time, right? It would save enormous time and enormous efforts. We will discuss further in next class how it would save, right? But this is the pyramid structure, test pyramid, which would tell you that where you need to focus primarily with more coverage, right? If the coverage is missing at the unit test, so as a SDET, we have to focus and provide more coverage at API level then, right? API testing. And then anyway, we would need to have UI testing. It doesn't say like you don't need UI testing at all, right? So you need to have the UI testing, and what level of testing that at the UI level we would do is something which again a strategy, right? Whether you would automate the entire uh, test cases, all I mean the functional level of test cases, end to end, each and every test case, or it's about it all based upon the coverage. Now the strategy would be dependent on the percentage of coverage that you are providing. If you achieve somewhere around, in the recent project, what we did is, we achieved 99% of application testing coverage at the API. Okay, because what we have seen is our end-to-end tests, they run for longer durations. Okay, because it involves the screen interaction, so it takes more time for these tests to execute. Even though these are less, I have 100 tests in the current project, but it takes somewhere around 6 to 7 hours to complete the execution for the manual testing team. Now that's why we automated, and it takes somewhere around 3 hours, near to 3 hours. So it has decreased the efforts from the manual testing team, maybe to 50%, right? Now what we thought, okay, so same functional automated tests which are running in 3 hours, why can't we bring that into 10 minutes, right? This is the thought process that we had. Then what we followed is this pyramid structure. So pyramid says like focus on API test. So we focused on API functional automation, which provides 99% of my coverage. Now what happens is any number of combination of test data, right? Let's say like a drop down. I have a drop down field which actually takes some 10 different values. So now my functional tests at this level can be tested with all the combination sets of data, because it just takes 10 minutes to execute for one set of data, right? Now you imagine if the same 100 test cases, the functional tests, I need to execute for all the different combinations of test data, it sucks, right? So entire lot, it takes 3 hours through automation, automated way of execution. It's all about the strategy. Do you feel that now? So when I strategize this, so I thought, okay, I have saved 50% of my efforts. So 3 hours, it came down to 3 hours, no? It was taking some 7 hours, so okay, more than 50, more than 50%, right? I reduced it. I went back and told to the leadership that, yeah, we achieved this, so I'm very much happy that we achieved it with 3 hours. Later on, there was some situation where we need to execute for various combinations of data. Then we have that framework in place where data driven. So we maintain it in some Excel. So data can be pushed through the Excel. So we did that. And now for all these various combinations of data, these 100 tests need to be repeated. No, it took somewhere around 2 days to complete the entire lot. Now that's where again we thought it sucks. 2 days to wait in order to identify any critical issues or bugs. So that definitely would be a major concern, right? So because sometimes we may not find even 2 days of window for the regression. People, they say like once the development is complete, once the functional testing is complete, we immediately want to push it to the this one because of the priority of that functionality. Maybe it is a hot fix, right? Now I cannot do the entire regression suite, execute it, and blah 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 stuff. So there are various ways of strategizing it, but when you strategize, there is also some bit of risk involved when you do that sampling, right? And then okay, I have 100 tests. Okay, let me run only 20 tests out of 100 because I know it takes 2 days to complete 100 tests. So I would omit uh, part of partial number of test cases. So I will omit 80 test cases and I will execute only 20, scope 20 for this hotfix. Now again, hotfix is tested. We would say we generate a report, we would share it, say like we completed our regression, and after going there, it has impacted some other application, and you have those scenarios in 80 tests which were not executed. Now you would feel it, right? Feel the heat. So that's why where we came up with this 99% coverage of these 100 test cases here itself at API functional flows, which were automated, and the entire lot can be executed for a single set of data in 10 minutes. So again, in 3 hours, just for once the set of test cases were being executed. Rather than that, now my strategy helped me to execute the entire set of test data, right? Entire set of test data in 3 hours. And to confirm that my system is stable from the backend. So my APIs are secured. When I say APIs are secured, so what else left out? It is UI. Correct? No. APIs are secured. So
Yeah.
APIs and your database, everything is secured now, right? It's only about UI. So if I find any errors or issues, failures in my end-to-end tests, who need to focus primarily? UI developers. That's all. I don't go to API or the backend developer and say, hey, this is failing, man, can you check it? Because I know that my APIs are 100% working fine. No need to worry about my backend. They did a great job. Now nobody need to worry where this bug is from. Is it something need to go to UI or something scope for backend, right? So whatever issues that you identify at the backend, those would be fixed, and then a clean report would be generated. No, for me, time is saved, efforts are saved, and again, when I run this 100 for a single set of data itself, it is enough for me, right? Single set of data itself is enough for me to evaluate the UI, right? I don't need to run for multiple sets of data now from the UI side. That's how we strategized it. So this is one of the strategies, and primarily it worked out very well in a couple of projects I did in this fashion, right? Following this pyramid model. So I would suggest people to utilize this kind of strategy whenever it is about automation. So that's why I said automation is just not about the UI automation. It would be multiple things, like it would be API test automation, it would be non-functional testing, non-functional test automation. Within that, again, you would have performance, load, stress, uh, what else? Penetration testing, security testing. So all these are where you have multiple numerous tools and numerous ways of strategies and numerous ways of automating them, right? Clear on this part? Any questions?
No.
Clear? So how we want to strategize or how we need to approach for our uh, automation scope? Clear now? These all are very much important for your interviews as well. People would focus on this, how you strategize the things, how you evaluate the things. So nobody would tell this. So even the course which I have here, these are not included there, but upon the self-interest and as well as I feel that people need to know these things, so I'm sharing them. So this is this session of day one. Yeah. So I will close out here. In case of any questions, just let me know. Any questions?
No. Thank you.
No? Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.